Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast. We have yet to do an episode on the illegal administrative rewrite of Title IX. Of course, Title IX being the federal civil rights law that prevented sex-based discrimination, enacted 52 years ago. Now we have an administration in the White House who has rewritten Title IX in its entirety, abolishing what Title IX was originally intended to do. This is the most anti-woman, anti-reality pursuit we have seen from this administration thus far. I cannot imagine that this will be helpful to the Biden administration in the polls come November. But today's guest is someone who is more than qualified to talk and speak to this topic. He is someone who has taken direct action in suing the Biden administration for said rewrite. I am so excited to get into this conversation with Attorney General Ken Paxton. Well, Attorney General Paxton, really, I just wanted to start out by thanking you for all that you do in your relentless pursuit of justice and upholding the law in a world where we have seemingly gone lawless. Your job is a hard one and definitely a thankless one at that. So thank you. But gosh, I'm so excited to be talking with you. You are one of the many attorney generals who have now decided to ultimately sue the Biden administration over their illegal administrative rewrite of Title IX. And so I just wanted you to take a very brief second and explain what the Biden administration's rewrite of Title IX really means. And I guess specifically, what does it mean for sex-based protections under federal law?
Yeah, so Riley, thanks for having me on, and I really appreciate the kind words. It is true that they are rewriting Title IX, but this is sort of what we've been dealing with since President Obama, and now I think we're on steroids now doing this, where the Biden administration comes in, looks at laws, can't get Congress to change them, so they decide, I don't need elected representatives. We can do this like Venezuela or China. I'll just change it. And so that's why I'm involved in over 70 lawsuits with the Biden administration since they came in, 3.5 years ago. Title IX is no different. They've come in and changed the whole purpose and intent of our elected representatives, and this bill was signed by the president that was there at the time. So this is all done constitutionally. And what President Biden does is says, I'm not following the Constitution. I'm not following federal law. I have my own ideas, and this is going to go my way. And whoever elected the representatives at that time, forget it. We're doing it my way. And that way is this. We're going to go against the intent of Title IX, which was to provide opportunities for women in sports and provide opportunities they didn't have at the time. And when you change it, when you do a rewrite where you say men can now compete with women, you've perverted drastically the intent of what Congress passed, and you've done it by edict. And so there's nothing right about this. The actual result is bad. The actual way they did it was bad. We're talking bad like if we were in Venezuela bad or China bad. This is where we're at.
I think that's a good comparison to make, and I think it's something that a lot of people are now understanding, at least in terms of kind of this Marxist, socialist, communist regime, like in Venezuela or Cuba or Brazil or China or any of these countries that you mentioned. So the effects of it, essentially equating sex with gender identity. This means that men can have full access to bathrooms, locker rooms, changing spaces. Men could potentially be housed in dorm rooms with women. The sports aspect, we've seen, I think they started working on this, at least announced this rewrite back in June of 2022, so the past 2 years, but they've strategically said that the sports component hasn't been rolled out yet. But to me, it doesn't make sense. They say they still equate sports with sex, yet they say sex and gender identity are the same thing. And so what I think this looks like, again, someone who doesn't necessarily understand, of course, the law in the way that you do, to me, what this looks like is he's winking at the normal people who understand that men and women are different, but he's also winking at the crazy people who don't have the same conclusion. Is that fair to say?
You're brilliant. You've got it. That's exactly what he's doing. He's got an election coming up. He doesn't want to lose the voters that would think, how wrong that you would do this to women, how wrong you do this to my daughter, how wrong that you would violate federal law, how wrong that you'd violate the Constitution, and you just issue this edict. On the other hand, he wants to signal, hey, this is coming. After the election, I'll finish this off, and I will do all those things. I will harm women. I will violate federal law. I will violate my constitutional duty. And I want you to know that it's coming because I'm starting right now. So here it comes. And this is where we are with a president that disdains the idea that the American public have the say in this and not him alone.
What about the free speech component to this rewrite?
Well, look, this is one of the things that they are very hateful of our Constitution, whether it's the Second Amendment and here the First Amendment, where they try to punish and censor you if you have a different view on transgender. If you actually are with 99% of the population that wouldn't want a rewrite of this law, and that's why it's not happening, because Congress could never pass a rewrite of this law to hurt women. But then they try to shut you down. They did the same thing during COVID. They've done it with other issues. They've done it with issues related to January 6th. And this is what even our law enforcement do now. Our FBI and our other law enforcement agencies, Department of Justice, they become so corrupt and they are used for political purpose to shut down the actual Constitution. That's where we're at as well.
Is this lawsuit something that you would want to see make it all the way to the Supreme Court? Obviously, it's unfortunate that it has to go that direction. But is that something that, as an attorney general, you would want to see?
Well, I presume that whoever loses at the Fifth Circuit, which is where I'm at, will take it will try to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think that's actually a good thing, because I want this to protect all women, and I don't know how you can have different opinions in different circuits, which is potentially going to happen, and where Title IX is enforced as written by our elected representatives, or it's enforced the way Joe Biden rewrote it. You can't have both, right? You've got to treat women the same. And so whether we're going to have a Supreme Court that stands up for the rule of law, I hope so, and I think they will, because this is pretty radical change in law, and obviously, as I said, done by one person or as a group of bureaucrats at his agency.
Another thing I found out after the fact, after the proposal was introduced, was that the original Title IX, implemented back in 1972, was only 37 words, with one word being activity, which ultimately allowed Title IX to be what it's most notable for, which is giving women equal opportunity, men and women equal opportunity in sports. But this new rewrite, General Paxton, was 1,577 pages, almost 500,000 words, compared to the original 37 words under President Nixon. Again, I just think it's a telltale sign. When you have something that changes that drastically, it's a telltale sign that there's some fluff in there, some stuff they're trying to hide. How does this...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I may not be a lawyer, but you've just taught me something. I didn't know it was 37 words, and I didn't know. I knew it was long. I didn't know how many pages, but no, I think that says it all, right? I mean, 37. You can put it on half a page, and now you've got something that's on 1,500 and whatever pages. It's a perversion of the American Constitution. It is the perversion of this idea that the founders saw as checks and balances, so you didn't have an abusive president. I'm sad to say this president doesn't respect the law. He doesn't respect the Constitution. And so far, he's not been held accountable. I certainly hope that happens in November, because if he's not held accountable in November, then, in my opinion, the constitutional republic is at an end. We have a faux constitutional republic that they'll say is. The reality is it is not a checks and balances. It is not a constitutional republic. It is let's just say it's a dictatorship controlled by a few people.
100%. And to your point, it's not just this that's pointing in that direction. There's a slew of things that this administration has done and is currently doing that point that direction. But how does this lawsuit coincide with the letter that Governor Abbott sent to President Biden, basically condemning the rewrite and also instructing the Texas Education Agency to ignore this federal rule?
Look, I appreciate Governor Abbott doing that. I think there's some other governors like Governor DeSantis doing the same thing. I read that Oklahoma is doing the same thing. Look, more states have to stand up and say, no, we're not putting up with a dictator. We're not putting up with a guy that's abusive of federal law. We're not going to just say, well, the president said it, and so we're going to do it. No way. That we should all protest and say, we're not going to let women be treated like this, and we're not going to let the Constitution be abused. The states created the federal government. They gave them certain powers, and all the rest of the powers were reserved to the states. And this is not a power of the president. And so if we accept this, then we are accepting a role of no constitution. The Constitution doesn't matter, and that ultimate power lies in the hands of one person. And that's not the level of freedom that we've grown accustomed to. That is losing our freedom in its entirety.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've seen Governor DeSantis, we've seen Governor Stitt in Oklahoma, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas. I think Governor Pillen just did the same thing, but of course, all following Texas's lead, which seems to be the trend. You guys are really the leader on a plethora of issues, and now to see other states signing on to some lawsuit, whether it's with you guys or I think South Carolina and Georgia are suing together. I know Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, a couple other states, they're suing together again, but really following your all's lead.
Well, look, I actually appreciate that, Riley. I am glad that other states are saying. I think the more challenges to this and the more circuits, the better, because it brings the issue out, it gets more coverage, and the administration, this little wink wink thing that you were talking about, gets exposed to the American public. And let the American public speak out and start talking about this. And hopefully, they can vote with their feet when they go into the voting booth and say, you know what, President Biden, you're not a dictator. We're not going to let this happen. And I just hope and pray that the American people realize that and that they don't put up with this, because if they do, we're going to get more of it, and we're going to lose our ability to control what goes on in our government. It's all going to be decided by a few people.
Well, it's headlines like this next one that I'm going to share with you that just happened in Texas that I think are waking the American people up. This just happened at Texas A&M this past week. The University of Michigan women's water polo team was set to bring their 31-year-old male teammate to the 2024 Women's National Collegiate Club Water Polo Championships, again, hosted by Texas A&M University. I mean, I have so many questions here. Again, this is a 31-year-old man playing for the Women's National Championship Water Polo. The male didn't end up coming because of public pressure and national outrage after the story broke. But again, this headline, it speaks to the insanity of today's world. And so I wanted to get your initial thoughts on this.
Well, first of all, I mean, honestly, if you told me this story 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd say, I don't believe you. It's not true. That's made up. Who would even think of this? Things have gotten so outlandish, and we've accepted such perversion and such, things on the things that we would never expect, that men can, like, legitimately and with the authority of their schools, come in and compete against women. We all know that there are biological differences, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and men have certain advantages over women from a physical standpoint. It's completely unfair. I've had 3 daughters that were all competing in some type of sports, and I don't think that, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want my daughters to have to compete against a man, and I wouldn't allow it.
No. And speaking, I guess, of universities in Texas, University of Texas got some national coverage recently with the protests surrounding what's going on in the Middle East. And so I guess from your standpoint, I mean, is there any legal action being had? We saw several protesters being arrested, which is quite the contrast to what's going on at the likes of UCLA and Columbia and different places. And so what does that look like from your role?
So it's not my area of responsibility, but I certainly applaud University of Texas. I applaud the governor for his quick action, because I think he really forced the issue and had them arrested. And so, I mean, look, it's ridiculous that these people are shutting down commerce, that they're impeding other people's, on their lives. I am a complete believer in the First Amendment. They ought to have a right to speak out, even if I disagree with them. However, you shouldn't be able to block traffic. You shouldn't be able to affect other people's rights to do what they're supposed to do. So there are limitations, and these people, as foul as their ideas are, they have a right to have those ideas. However, they don't have a right to hurt other people, and in this case, that's their intent. They're trying to hurt our economy, and Hamas has even said that they want these people to impede commerce, and that's a real problem if we allow it to happen.
Of course. What other issues are going on? Obviously, Texas is dealing with the border. That's something that the whole nation has been following, and I would say supporting you and your office, what you guys are doing as a state down there in Texas. What else is going on that you're spending your time litigating?
Yeah, so we have numerous lawsuits against the Biden administration, very similar. Like immigration, I think we've had 20 lawsuits against the Biden administration, and that started day one when Joe Biden said, "I'm not going to deport anybody." Again, clear violation of federal law, clear violation of his constitutional role. Should have been impeached just on that alone. And he told the cartels, he signaled to them, kind of like you were talking about his wink, wink. He was telling the cartels, "Bring people here as fast as you can. You can make a lot of money. You can make $10,000, $12,000 a person. You can human traffic. You can get your drugs across the border. All I want is people to vote. And I'm going to get those people in the right places, Texas, Florida, Republican states where I need to win." And that's why they started on day one. They didn't wait. And then they've continued to violate federal law. We've sued them over all kinds of things. We sued them over cutting down our fences, coming onto our property and cutting down our fences. We're still in that litigation. I believe we're going to win it. We put buoys up to protect some of these people from coming across bad places. He said no, he's not. He's willing to risk lives. He's willing to risk their lives because he needs voters. And if people die, if kids die from fentanyl overdoses, if they're trafficked, he is okay. He is saying we are okay with that. We just need votes. So that's the fight there. We also just sued the ATF last week for violating Second Amendment rights. They're trying to restrict that. And remember, the Second Amendment isn't there necessarily for self-defense. It was there to protect us from our own government. The founders were fearful of an out-of-control government, even ours. And so, of course, the government doesn't want you to have guns. In most countries, you're not allowed to. It's controlled by the government. In this country, you are because of our founders' wisdom on that. The ATF comes in and starts regulating individual gun sales between individuals, not gun shops, which, by the way, Congress specifically excluded. And they just spit on that legislation and they created their own, just like with what you were talking about with transgender. They just spit on those laws and said, we're going to control it anyway. So we sued them along with Kansas.
Amazing. Well, we will certainly be following what the state of Texas is doing, because as I have said, and I've said it before many times, Texas is a leader. So you guys doing the right thing, the just thing, is important for your state, but really for the rest of the nation. So again, could not be more grateful for you, for the role that you have, the very hard job that you have in a world that is absolutely just turned upside down at the moment. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you. And thanks for having me on. And don't quit. If we fight together, as Benjamin Franklin said, pretty wise guy, one of our founders, if we don't hang together, we're all going to hang alone. So let's hang together.
If there is one job that I would hate to have in today's climate, it would be an attorney general, especially the attorney general of Texas, given everything that's going on there. But we could not be more grateful for Attorney General Paxton, really in his relentless pursuit to restore sanity, to uphold the law, which is brave in today's world. Along with the slew of other attorney generals who are suing. Really great leadership. I think it shows that the tide is turning. People are waking up and we're no longer going to comply. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe anywhere where you get your podcast. Check us out on OutKick.com, and we will see you again next week.